Feminist friends convinced ex-wife to destroy our marriage. Hey, true story. My name's Xavier. And man, I've been watching your channel for a while now. I always thought some of those stories were wild, like, that could never happen to me. But life has a funny way of proving you wrong. I guess it's my turn to tell mine. I'm 32 years old now. I work in marketing for a mid-sized tech company. I'm not some flashy guy, not rolling in money, not struggling either. I've always been the type who believes in putting my head down, working hard, and building something solid. That's the mindset I had when I met my ex-wife. Let's call her Claire. We met at a college career event when I was 23 and she was 22. The event was one of those networking expos where companies set up booths to recruit interns and promote themselves to upcoming graduates. I was there representing my company's marketing department, giving a small presentation about branding opportunities and social media campaigns. She was there doing the exact same thing, but for a rival company. I remember seeing her across the aisle, standing next to her company's banner with that confident smile of hers. She had this natural charisma that drew people in. Even when she wasn't talking, she just had this glow that made her stand out. At one point, I walked over under the pretense of asking about her booth's layout, but really, I just wanted to talk to her. We hit it off immediately. Our banter was natural, like we'd known each other for years. She joked that our companies were friendly enemies, and I joked that it was like a forbidden romance between rival houses. She laughed, and that was it. I was hooked. We exchanged numbers before the event ended, and after a few weeks of texting, we went on our first date. It was nothing fancy, tacos and margaritas at this local spot near campus, but it was one of those nights where time disappears. We stayed until closing, then sat in her car for another 2 hours just talking. That's how it started, a connection built on laughter, ambition, and a shared love for marketing. She understood my world. She knew what it was like to have deadlines breathing down your neck, clients changing their minds last minute, the constant pressure to be creative. She got me. We dated for 3 years before we got married. Those years were honestly great. We were both career-driven, but we still made time for each other. We traveled when we could, went on weekend getaways, cooked together, worked out together. She used to say one of her favorite parts of the week was Sunday morning, waking up, making breakfast, and just hanging out in pajamas all day. When we got married at 26, I thought I had it all. A stable career, a beautiful wife, and a future that looked bright. We talked about kids, not right away, but within a couple of years. She loved the idea of being a mom. We even looked at houses in family-friendly neighborhoods just for fun. For the first 3 years of marriage, everything was pretty smooth. Sure, we had disagreements like any couple, but nothing major. If anything, our biggest fights were over who got to control the TV remote or who made better spaghetti. Then she joined that book club. It started innocently enough. One of her coworkers invited her, saying it was a group of women who loved reading and discussing books that empowered women. I didn't think anything of it. I'm all for people having hobbies, and I thought it was good that she had something social outside of work. The first few months seemed fine. They met once or twice a month, usually at a coffee shop or one of their houses. She'd come home after those meetings looking energized. She'd tell me about the book they were reading, and we'd talk about it. I remember one was Eat, Pray, Love, and we actually had a fun conversation about traveling and finding purpose. But over time, something changed. She started coming home different, not just tired, different. Her attitude shifted. The way she talked to me started to sound like she was reading from a script someone else wrote. She'd throw out phrases like patriarchal expectations and emotional labor. At first, I thought she was just excited about the books, maybe picking up on some new ideas. But then she started challenging everything about our marriage. One night we were watching TV and she suddenly said, "Why do I always cook dinner?" I was caught off guard. I said, because you like to cook. You literally told me it relaxes you. She said, that's internalized conditioning. Society made me think I like it. I didn't even know how to respond to that. I told her, okay, I can help cook more, no problem. But it wasn't about cooking, it was about what that book club was feeding her. Suddenly, she didn't want kids anymore. She said she didn't want to lose her identity as a woman. She started saying marriage was a social construct and that she didn't owe me emotional labor. I swear, it was like watching someone get reprogrammed. It got to the point where every conversation turned into a debate. If I said something as simple as, want me to pick up dinner? She'd turn it into a lecture about gender roles and expectations. Don't get me wrong, I can handle change. I can handle growth. But what I couldn't handle was the hostility. She started looking at me like I was the enemy, like just existing, as her husband made me part of the problem. The breaking point came one night after dinner. I asked her what was wrong because she'd been distant for weeks. She said, I feel like you're holding me back. Holding her back? I supported her through every job change, helped her study for certifications, celebrated her promotions. I asked how she could say that, and she told me that the women in her book club made her realize she'd settled too young. That night, after she went to bed, I had this gut feeling something was off. So yeah, I did what I know some people might judge me for. I went through her phone. I found the group chat with her book club friends, and man, I wish I hadn't looked, but I'm glad I did. Those women hated men, straight up. The messages were full of posts and memes mocking husbands. They'd screenshot texts from their exes and laugh about manipulating men for attention. My wife had been venting about our marriage in there, but instead of helping her work through things, they were egging her on. One of them wrote, "You need to get out before you waste your best years being someone's maid." Another one said, "Start planning now, don't tell him. Slowly move assets. If you do it right, you can get half and make him regret ever thinking he could control you." They were literally giving her a divorce strategy, step by step. Here's what the messages said. Open a secret checking account and start saving small amounts from the joint account for emergencies. Document every argument and twist it to make it sound like emotional abuse. Refuse intimacy for a few months so she can claim the marriage was sexless. Talk to a therapist and subtly plant the idea that her husband was controlling. Once everything was documented, file for divorce and ask for spousal support. They even shared screenshots of what one woman's lawyer friend had written as a template. Reading that made my stomach drop. I felt sick. She wasn't planning to fix our marriage. She was planning to destroy it. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her the same. She noticed something was off and asked what was wrong, but I told her I was fine. Meanwhile, I was quietly taking screenshots of everything, every message, every piece of advice, every plan. I didn't say a word to her. I took those screenshots straight to a lawyer. When I showed the lawyer what I'd found, he looked at me and said, "You're in a better position than you think. We can make sure you come out of this without a scratch." He explained how we could preemptively file, lock down the finances, and protect my assets. He told me to act normal at home until the paperwork was ready. So for 2 weeks, I pretended everything was fine. We had dinner together, watched shows, and made small talk. Meanwhile, I was moving funds, freezing certain joint accounts, and preparing myself for impact. Then came the day. She was served the divorce papers at home. I'll never forget the look on her face. Pure shock. She went from confused to angry in seconds. She said, "You can't be serious. You're divorcing me." I said, "Yeah, you've been planning it for months. I just beat you to it." She started crying, saying I was paranoid, that I was making up stories. I showed her the screenshots. The color drained from her face. She couldn't even deny it. Then she snapped. She screamed, "You violated my privacy." I said, "You violated our marriage." We argued for about an hour, and at one point she said something that floored me. She told me one of the women in her book club the lawyer would be representing her. I swear, you can't make this up. I told her, you mean the same woman who told you how to screw me over? Perfect. That's when I knew it was going to be messy. So, true story. That's where I'll pause this email. The divorce process itself deserves its own chapter. It got uglier than I could have imagined. But I'll say this much. My lawyer wasn't lying when he said he'd get me through it without a scratch. You never really think you'll be at war with someone you loved, but that's exactly what it turned into. A war. And the thing is, I didn't even start it. I just made sure I finished it. Let me pick up where I left off. After my ex-wife, let's keep calling her Claire, got served the divorce papers, the house turned cold. I moved into the guest room that night. We didn't say a word to each other for days. It was like living with a ghost that occasionally slammed cabinet doors just to remind you it was still haunting you. About a week later, I got an email from her lawyer. And yep, just like she said, it was her book club buddy, Melissa. I recognized the name right away from the group chat screenshots. She was the loudest one in that whole conversation. The one who bragged about making her ex pay for her emotional trauma by getting spousal support even though they'd been married less than 2 years. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to represent Claire after basically coaching her on how to screw me. But my lawyer was unfazed. When I showed him the email, he just smirked and said, "This is going to be fun." Now my lawyer's name was Mark. Older guy, been doing divorce law for over 25 years. The kind of man who's seen every dirty trick in the book. He told me, you stay calm, stay polite, and don't react emotionally. Let them dig their own hole. And man, they dug deep. The first thing Melissa tried to do was paint me as controlling and emotionally abusive. I knew it was coming because I'd seen it in the group chat strategy. The emails and filings were full of buzzwords: toxic masculinity, manipulative behavior, psychological oppression. You'd think I was running some kind of cult the way they described me. I remember sitting across from my lawyer at his office as he read through her claims. He looked up from the papers, leaned back and said, "Did she write this, or did they copy and paste it from Tumblr?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. But what they didn't know was that I had everything, every screenshot, every message, every instruction those women gave her. Mark said, "We're not going to use it all right away. We'll wait for them to overplay their hand." The first hearing was brutal, not because I was in trouble, but because of the pure theater of it all. Melissa walked in like she was on stage, all confidence and power suits. Claire looked nervous, but also smug, like she thought she had this in the bag. Meanwhile, I was calm. I didn't even look at them much. I just sat there, composed, taking notes. When it was my turn to speak, I simply said, "Your Honor, I have evidence that directly contradicts most of these claims." Melissa immediately tried to object, saying it was illegally obtained private communication, but my lawyer jumped in. "Actually, Your Honor, these were shared in a group chat that was not password protected and contained multiple third parties. There's no expectation of privacy there." You could feel the tension shift. The judge said she'd review the evidence before the next hearing. That was the first win. After court, I remember walking past Claire and hearing her whisper, "I can't believe you do this to me." I wanted to say, "Do what?" "Defend myself from a hit job you were planning." But I didn't. I just kept walking. A few days later, my lawyer got a call from Melissa's office. They wanted to discuss settlement options. Translation, they knew they were in trouble. The funny thing is, they wanted half of everything. The house, the savings, my 401k, and spousal support for at least 3 years. I just laughed. We'd only been married for 5 years, and she was fully employed, making nearly the same salary as me. My lawyer said, "Let them shoot for the moon. They'll land in reality soon enough." We countered by offering to split the house equity fairly and divide the joint savings equally. No spousal support, no additional payments. They rejected it immediately. So we went back to court. At this point, things got nastier. Claire started posting cryptic quotes on social media, stuff like, "Sometimes you don't realize you're in a cage until you fly away, and gaslighting is real, even from the ones who claim to love you." I had coworkers messaging me asking if I was okay. She was building a narrative, but the internet never forgets, and karma always keeps receipts. One of her book club friends, not Melissa, another one, posted a story tagging her, and it accidentally showed parts of their group chat conversation on her screen. You could literally see a message from Melissa saying, "Remember, stay strong. The more emotional you act in court, the more sympathy you'll get." Someone screenshotted it and sent it to me. When I showed it to my lawyer, he laughed again and said, "They just handed you a gift." We filed that as evidence of coaching and manipulation. It made them look ridiculous. During the next hearing, the judge questioned both sides about the online behavior. My lawyer calmly explained how a coordinated group had been guiding my ex through deceitful tactics. Then he submitted the screenshots. The look on Melissa's face was priceless. She went pale. Claire looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The judge told both parties to cease all online postings about the case immediately and said something along the lines of, "This court will not entertain theatrics or social media trials." That was the turning point. From that day on, Melissa's confidence cracked. You could tell she realized she was in over her head. The feminist buzzwords stopped showing up in filings, and suddenly the tone of their arguments shifted from "he's controlling" to "we just want a fair division." Oh, now you want fair division? Interesting. Meanwhile, Claire's book club started fracturing. How do I know? Because one of her former friends reached out to me, a woman named Tina. Tina messaged me saying, "I'm sorry for what they did. I left the group because it got too toxic." She told me Melissa was furious about how things were going and had started blaming Claire for not following the plan properly. Apparently, the group was falling apart because they realized not everyone was built for the kind of manipulation they preached. It was bizarre. It was like some cult imploding from within. Around that same time, I started therapy. I'll be honest, I wasn't sleeping well. My anxiety was high, and even though I was winning legally, emotionally, I was drained. My therapist told me something that stuck with me. You can't reason with people who rewrite reality to fit their narrative. That became my mantra. The next few months were all about depositions, financial disclosures, and endless paperwork. But you know what? My lawyer was right. I made it through without a scratch. When the final judgment came, the court ruled. No spousal support. She didn't qualify. Equal division of the joint savings account. I kept my full 401k since we proved it predated the marriage. We sold the house, and I got 60% of the proceeds due to my larger contribution to the down payment. In short, I walked away just fine. She, on the other hand, didn't. After the divorce finalized, I found out through mutual acquaintances that Melissa's law firm had let her go. Apparently, she'd been representing friends on the side without proper conflict of interest documentation. The whole thing with my case had raised some eyebrows. Claire. She moved into a small apartment downtown and kept posting empowerment quotes like she was reborn. For a while, I ignored it. I was just happy to have peace again. But about 6 months later, she texted me out of the blue. It was a random Tuesday afternoon. The message said, "I know you'll probably ignore this, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how things ended. I wasn't thinking clearly back then." I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me wanted to unload everything, tell her how much she hurt me, how I still had nights where I'd replay the whole thing in my head, wondering how it went so wrong. But the other part of me, the calm part, the one that had spent months rebuilding himself, that part just didn't care anymore. So I replied, "I appreciate the apology. I hope you find peace." That was it. She read it, didn't respond, and that was the last time I ever heard from her. Since then, Life's been surprisingly good. I bought a smaller townhouse closer to work. I started running again. I even joined a local hiking club. And funny enough, that's where I met someone new. Her name's Alyssa. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months now. She's nothing like Claire, and I mean that in the best way possible. She's kind, grounded, funny, and doesn't treat relationships like a competition. She cooks, I cook, we share chores, and neither of us keeps score. It's peaceful. But before anyone thinks this is just some fairy tale ending, it's not. The truth is, I still have scars from that marriage. There's this lingering sense of caution now, like I'm constantly on alert for red flags. But I'm learning to trust again, slowly. Looking back, I think the saddest part wasn't even the divorce. It was watching someone I loved become a stranger because of the people she surrounded herself with. Claire wasn't a bad person at her core, but she was easily influenced. And when you mix insecurity with ideology, you get a cocktail that destroys everything good in its path. That book club didn't just ruin marriages, it ruined friendships. I found out later that 2 of the other women's marriages ended after they followed Melissa's empowerment strategy. Turns out none of them walked away happy or rich. One of them ended up paying her ex-husband alimony because she made more money. Another moved back in with her parents after realizing starting over at 35 wasn't as glamorous as it sounded in those group chats. It's poetic justice in a way. As for me, I took everything I learned and put it into building a better life. I reconnected with old friends, focused on my career, and even started mentoring younger guys at work who were getting engaged or newly married. I don't tell them what to do, I just tell them to watch for changes, to pay attention when the person they love starts talking like a stranger. The other thing I've learned is that privacy in relationships is sacred, but transparency is what keeps them alive. If you can't talk openly with your partner about what's bothering you, those conversations will happen elsewhere. And that's where trouble starts. People think affairs are the biggest danger to a marriage, but sometimes it's influence, it's ideology, it's bad friends whispering poison into your partner's ear, telling them they deserve better when they already have something good. I don't hate Claire anymore. I don't even resent her, but I'll never forgive. The way she weaponized feminism to justify betrayal, that's what hurt the most. Watching something that was supposed to be about equality turn into an excuse for selfishness. I've moved on though, truly. Funny story, a few months ago I ran into Tina, the ex-book club member who reached out to me. She told me she was engaged. She said she'd learned a lot watching what happened between me and Claire, and that she wanted to build a relationship on mutual respect, not ideology. She said, "You were the example of what not to lose." That hit me hard. I guess I became a cautionary tale in their circle. So yeah, true story. That's how it all went down. The divorce was messy, the fallout was uglier than I imagined, but in the end, I came out stronger. If I had to sum it up, love without respect is fragile, and respect without honesty is pointless. I learned that the hard way. And now, when I look back at everything, the betrayal, the courtroom drama, the fake empowerment quotes, I don't feel bitterness anymore, just relief. Relief that I got out before she could drag me down any further. Relief that I trusted my instincts, and relief that I can finally tell my story to people who understand that not every man who fights back is a villain. I'm at peace now. When the divorce was finalized, I remember sitting in my car in the courthouse parking lot for a long time. Not because I was sad, but because it didn't feel real. It was this weird mix of exhaustion and freedom, like finishing a marathon barefoot. Yeah, you made it, but you're bleeding. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there staring at the steering wheel, thinking, what now? For 5 years, my entire identity had been wrapped up in being someone's husband. Every decision, every plan, every trip, it all revolved around we, and now it was just me. That's a strange adjustment, man. Going from sharing a home to hearing your own footsteps echo. From eating dinner together every night to wondering if you even feel like cooking at all. The first few weeks were quiet, too quiet, and I moved into a townhouse. Smaller than the house we shared, but cozy. 2 bedrooms, one for me and one I turned into a home office. When I first moved in, it didn't feel like home, just a place to exist. The walls felt hollow, the fridge was almost empty. I didn't even bother decorating at first, but slowly that changed. Every weekend, I'd add something new, a plant here, a rug there. I hung pictures from my travels, ones I'd taken long before I even met Claire. For a while, I realized I didn't even remember who I was before her. I'd become so accustomed to being half of a couple that I'd forgotten my own individuality. Rediscovering that became my mission. The first thing I did was take a trip, alone. It wasn't anything crazy. I went to Colorado to visit a friend who lived near Boulder. I'd always wanted to climb the Rockies, but kept putting it off because Claire wasn't really the outdoorsy type. That trip changed me more than I expected. There's something healing about being in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by silence and nature. I remember standing at the top of this trail overlooking a valley, wind cutting across my face and feeling this huge weight lift off me. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about her or the marriage or what went wrong. I was just present. It hit me right then. I'd been living reactively for years, always responding to her moods, her changes, her philosophies. I hadn't done anything purely for me in forever. That realization was like hitting a reset button. When I came back home, I started developing new routines. Small things, but they mattered. I cooked just for myself. I went to the gym regularly again. I even started journaling, which I used to think was corny, but it helped. Writing down thoughts stopped them from circling endlessly in my head. Work got better too. Without all the emotional chaos at home, my focus returned. My creativity came back. My team noticed, and a few months later, I got promoted to marketing manager. Ironically, that was something Claire always said she wanted, for us to climb the ladder together. I guess I climbed faster without her holding me down. But it wasn't all upward momentum. About 4 months post-divorce, I hit a wall. It's what I call the quiet depression. You don't cry, you don't break down. You just feel numb. You start questioning everything. Did I do enough? Was it partly my fault? Could I have saved it if I'd been more patient? That's the hardest phase because it's not dramatic. It's just a dull ache that sneaks up on you. One night, I was scrolling through my phone, and out of nowhere, I saw an old picture of us at a beach resort in Mexico. We looked happy. I stared at it for a while and felt that familiar sting. But then I realized something important. That picture wasn't fake. It wasn't all lies. We were happy once. It just didn't last. And that's okay. Sometimes good people fall apart because they grow in different directions. Sometimes outside influences twist love into something unrecognizable. I used to think our marriage ended because of those toxic friends, and sure, they played a part, but I've come to understand something deeper. She wanted to believe them. That's what hurt most, but that's also what freed me. I stopped trying to make sense of her choices and focused on my own. Around that same time, I started running again. At first, it was just a stress release, but it turned into therapy. I'd run every morning before work, headphones in, sunrise coming up, my breath steady. There's something symbolic about it, putting one foot in front of the other, leaving old ground behind. During one of those runs, I met Alyssa. I mentioned her briefly in my last email, but this is where she really enters the story. She was part of a weekend hiking group I joined. The first time we talked, it was at the end of a long trail. Everyone else was exhausted, but she was sitting on a rock, eating an apple, smiling like she'd just discovered a secret about the world. We started chatting, and she asked what got me into hiking. I told her I'd been through some stuff and needed new scenery. She just nodded and said, "Yeah, sometimes life has to collapse before it can rebuild." That line stuck with me. We started seeing each other more during the walks, then coffee after, then dinners. She never pried into my past, never asked about my ex or the divorce. She just let me be, and that was new. Claire always wanted to analyze everything, every thought, every emotion, every perceived power dynamic. Alyssa, she just listened. We've been together for about a year now, and it's peaceful. No games, no competition, no ideological battles. We disagree sometimes, sure, but we handle it like adults. We talk. She's emotionally intelligent in a way that doesn't come with buzzwords or condescension. The biggest difference between her and my ex is that Alyssa believes partnership doesn't mean sameness. She says, "You bring your strengths, I bring mine. That's balance." And that's exactly what I needed. Career-wise, I've been thriving. That promotion led to me managing a small team of 6. We handle digital campaigns for mid-sized brands. It's stressful, but rewarding. I started mentoring one of the younger guys on my team. He's engaged and often asks me about relationships. I don't scare him with my story, but I do tell him this. Pay attention to how she treats you when no one's watching. That's who she really is. Outside of work, I've been rebuilding friendships. During my marriage, Claire subtly isolated me, not in a controlling way, but in that, "Oh, why do you still hang out with them?" type of tone that makes you feel guilty. After the divorce, I reached back out to my old friends, guys I'd known since college. They welcomed me back like no time had passed. We started doing poker nights, weekend barbecues, small road trips. That camaraderie reminded me how important it is for men to have their own circle. Relationships shouldn't consume your identity. Emotionally, healing came in layers. There was anger at first, at her, at the book club, at myself. Then came sadness, mourning not just the marriage, but the version of me that believed love was simple. Then came peace, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that shows up when you finally stop trying to rewrite history. I used to replay every argument in my head. Now I can barely remember what most of them were about. Time has a way of blurring pain into lessons. One lesson that stood out: never outsource your self-worth. For years, I depended on her validation, her approval, her affection, her moods. When that disappeared, I felt like I didn't exist. But once I learned to validate myself, to build confidence from within, I stopped needing anyone else to define me. It's funny, people think divorce breaks you, but in my case, it revealed me. It stripped away everything fake until all that was left was the core of who I actually am. About 8 months after the divorce, I ran into Claire by accident. It was at a conference, the kind we both used to attend for work. I didn't even recognize her at first. She looked tired, not in a physical way, in a soul-drained way. She approached me during a coffee break, said, "Hey, Xavier." I said, "Hey, Claire, how have you been?" She told me she'd been doing okay, that she was still at the same company but thinking of leaving. I nodded, polite but distant. Then she said, "You seem happier." I told her I am. She smiled a little sad and said, "I'm glad." Then she walked away. That was the closure I didn't know I needed. No arguments, no drama, no tears. Just 2 people who used to share a life, now strangers on different paths. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel nostalgia, just gratitude that it was over. A few months later, Tina, the ex-book club member who'd warned me about them, reached out again. She said the group had completely disbanded. Melissa, the ringleader, had moved out of state after losing her law license for misconduct related to client conflicts. I won't lie, that part felt like karma doing its job, but I didn't gloat. I just said, I hope everyone learned something from it. Tina told me she had. She said watching all of that unfold made her realize how bitterness disguised as empowerment destroys more than it saves. She'd since gotten engaged to a guy she met at work and was genuinely happy. That gave me some faith back in people. Fast forward to now, it's been about 2 years since the divorce, and I'm in a completely different headspace. I'm not just surviving anymore, I'm living. I've picked up new hobbies, photography, guitar, even cooking again. Funny how I dreaded cooking after what happened, but now I love it. There's something peaceful about chopping vegetables while music plays in the background. No arguments, no side eye, no walking on eggshells. I've traveled more in the last year than I did in the entire marriage. Italy, Japan, and Costa Rica. Each trip taught me something about myself, mainly that solitude isn't loneliness when you actually enjoy your own company. I've also started volunteering, mentoring teens interested in marketing. Watching them discover their creativity reminds me of when I first fell in love with my career. It feels good to give back without expecting anything in return. But the biggest change? My mindset about love. I used to think love was about passion and chemistry, that spark that makes everything feel electric. Now I think love is about peace, about feeling safe in someone's presence, not constantly needing to defend yourself or decode their moods. Alyssa and I don't have fireworks every day, but we have peace. We laugh, we communicate, and that's worth more than any temporary high. We talk about the future sometimes, marriage, kids, but I'm in no rush. I told her I want to build a foundation based on friendship first. She smiled and said, "That's the best kind of love, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself." I couldn't agree more. If there's one takeaway I want the men watching your channel to get from my story, it's this. Don't lose yourself trying to please someone who's lost themselves. You can't save a partner who doesn't want to be saved. You can't argue someone back into sanity when they've joined a crowd that rewards victimhood. All you can do is step back, protect your peace, and rebuild. Divorce isn't the end. It's a rebirth. A painful one, sure, but it forces you to rebuild from the ground up. And when you do it right, you end up stronger, wiser, and more grounded than you ever were before. These days, I wake up early, make coffee, open the blinds, and just watch the sunlight fill my living room. It's quiet, peaceful, no tension, no second guessing, no invisible war in my own home. Just calm. That's the part of healing no one shows. The boring peace. But let me tell you, boring peace beats chaotic passion every single time. I used to think I'd never trust again. Now I just trust differently, not blindly, but intentionally. I listen more, I observe more, and I set boundaries early. I'm grateful for everything I went through, even the worst parts, because without it, I wouldn't be here. So yeah, true story, that's where life took me after the storm. I'm not rich, I'm not famous, I'm not some hero. I'm just a guy who went through hell, crawled out, and found peace on the other side. And if my story helps even one man out there realize he's not crazy, he's not broken, and he's not alone, then it was worth writing. Until then, stay true. Xavier.